I came of age believing that if I followed the rules, all would be well. I obeyed my parents, I went to Sunday school, I studied and graduated university, I married for love, took employment with a stable company that promised me employment for life. Life was good, and I was safe. Yet over time, bad things started to happen. My company began to lose contracts. My friends were being laid off. Life became anxious and fearful. What would I ever do if I were to be laid off? At the same time, my relationship with my wife became tense with diverging interests, unexplained absences, growing suspicions. I felt betrayed, unloved, alone, adrift. Reality was closing in, and I was losing security. When my company offered me a 6-week assignment in Florida, I jumped at this God-sent opportunity to escape, to be employed for a few more weeks, to get away from the tension of my home life, to enjoy the warmth of sunshine, Friday happy hours, the promised romance of Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. But escape proved to be illusory. My life continued to rupture. While I managed to find extended employment in Florida, I understood for the first time that my company was not going to be taking care of me. I would have to manage my own welfare. I had to face the reality and likely permanence of my separation from home. My wife agreed that our 2 elementary-aged children would live with me. So there I was, alone with 2 little kids in a strange city, with no close friends, no family support. There I was, lost in despair, not knowing who I was or where I was going. There I was in the throes of grief and loss, the dregs of soulful pain. I would walk the streets at night, taking comfort in the warmth of the night air, the sweet blanket of darkness, the comfort of silence, save for the reassuring chorus of crickets. I took comfort in the abiding love of trees. I would wrap my arms about their living trunks, and they held me close as I cried. I took comfort in Wendell Berry's psalm. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in the beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I look for a church community to give me support. I looked through the yellow pages until I came to the U's, and there found my first Unitarian Universalist church. There I found community and family, hope and love, a growing understanding of what life is all about. I've learned that to be resilient, one must first have faith in the ultimate goodness of life. With faith, we can find hope and love. Benedictine nun and author Joan Chittister writes that the sunflower, that flower which when in shadow turns its head relentlessly towards the sun, that the sunflower is the patron saint of those in despair. I have learned that when darkness descends on the soul, it is time, like the sunflower, to go looking for whatever good things in life that there are that can bring us comfort. UU churches have been giving me comfort for more than 30 years.
Good morning. I'm Jane Schwartz. It is no secret that as people we can learn a lot from our mothers. I have learned a lot. The lessons we are taught by our maternal figures are invaluable. From my mother, I've learned to make carbonara, to make banana bread, and to make the best out of a bad situation. My father left us around 2007, and suddenly she was alone in raising a boisterous 7-year-old and an unhappy teenage girl. But she found us a tiny duplex with a rent that she could just barely afford. She took my sister and I to therapy as she lost weight from an undiagnosed chronic illness and kept a smile on her face. She was clinically depressed, severely anxious, and loved us fiercely. My mother made the best out of a bad situation. I told her I had ADHD because I was a very independent little 8-year-old and really believed that I did, and I probably did. So she took me, she got me tested, and she put me on Ritalin. She believed me. She got my sister into therapy, and she got me into therapy. And all the while, she was suffering. She was struggling more than me and my sister could ever know. Through the years, I have learned many lessons from my mother. I've learned how to make some really good carbonara. It's really good. And I've learned that resilience is not something you are born with. It is something you gain. It is something you earn. Resilience is part of the human spirit. We wouldn't be here today if we were not resilient individuals. I love my mother, and I love the lessons she has taught me. When you are struggling to find the power to go on in your lives, look to your mothers, look to the women in your lives who have struggled their whole lives. Thank you.
Maurice Sendak sold over 20 million copies of Where the Wild Things Are in 32 different languages. But when the book first appeared, libraries banned it and critics panned it. It was dangerous. It rewarded naughtiness. Max showed absolutely no remorse. And those monsters, they would terrify children. From the first, though, parents snapped up that story and read it to rapt children. Why? Sendak once claimed that he had only one subject. How do children survive? He himself was a sickly child, born to Jewish immigrants from Poland, and many of his relatives had perished in the Holocaust. Those who had survived crowded into his family's Brooklyn brownstone every single Sunday. And they loved Max, and they feared his sickliness with an intensity that he could not comprehend. To him, and these are his words, they had crazy faces with wild, blood-stained eyes and big yellow teeth. They pinched his cheeks and told him they could eat him up, they loved him so. In the feature-length film that he made with Spike Jonze, Sendak named the wild things after his traumatized aunts and uncles. Now, at first when I read that, I honestly, I thought it was a cruel mockery, but I have come to wonder if it isn't a benediction. Every single one of us, every day, faces wild things, monstrous, wolfish things that we feel we can't control, things that surface within us as well as outside of us, things that threaten to eat us alive. These things happen in our families, they happen in our workplaces, they happen in our nation, they happen around the globe. We have to face the terrifying feelings, the pains of aging, the crippling, conflicting responsibilities of our middle years, unsettling troubles at work, scary moves to unknown places, the unnerving quicksands of discrimination, the knee-buckling loss of family members and friends. We have to deal with negative emotions so distressing that we don't want to acknowledge them. We don't have names for them. So how can we bounce back when someone or something scares or enrages us? Max, I think, shows us this alternative world in and out of weeks and almost over a year in which we don't so much erase the scary things as learn to coexist with them. We can stare into the monster's yellow eyes without blinking and tame them counterintuitively, not by force, but by playing with them. Resilient people don't ignore their negative emotions. They just let them sit side by side with other feelings. So where the wild things are, lets us experience our most intense emotions, the strangeness of that. Lets us imagine not taming our demons by being silly, by baying at the moon and hanging on vines and parading around with the other wild things. Silliness, I've come to think, may be serious soul work. In the story, Sendak, as Max, cannot escape his traumatized family's weekly Sunday ritual, so he acts up and imagines joining those traumatized relatives in the land of the wild things, where together they tame the violence and, I think, experience the joy and even the rapture of the human condition. My children instinctively understood the importance of such rumpuses. My son initiated a band, a duo that he made with his sister. They were called the Hookie-Low Cats, and they routinely led us in rumpuses. My daughter, at age 6, gave me a birthday note in her own printing, which read, "You're 44 years old. You're silly. So you deserve a present." Something the 13th century mystic Rumi explains. Something makes hurt disappear. and someone fills the cup in front of us, though we taste only sacredness. When I was a young girl, growing up on the edge of a very small Nebraska town, my mom and dad's mantra was, attitude is everything. I've come to qualify that a little, but I still believe fervently in what the 19th century Unitarian and Black activist Frances Ellen Watkins Harper called a brighter coming day. I had vivid dreams as a girl. I frequently dreamed that I could take a step or two in my beloved cornfields, and each footfall buoyed me up so that I bounced, and each bounced buoyed me up until I could sail, and eventually I was sailing over these beautiful yellow-green cornfields and the beautiful maroon milo and my wonderful alfalfa fields. And I was looking down on this great blue ball that is the earth. I think of that dream often now as I reimagine how to walk through pain. A scary new wild thing inside me has made walking difficult, sometimes excruciating. Last fall, I was hiking miles and miles through Utah canyons, and now I'm tempted to park in the visitors only slots. I need resilience, and I'm lucky. I have the reserves necessary: a strong community, a loving family, and good doctors. So I'm able to choose Max's path. And like him, I'm relying on my imagination and those who call me back home. I'm imagining my limping, not as pain-bound aging, but as girlish bounce walking. I may not be able to hike miles and miles, but I can bounce walk to my kayak, and I can paddle upriver, and I can create a rumpus with those crazy cormorants and those wild blue herons we parade around as often as possible. And for this, I am grateful. In the land of the wild things, we drum up the courage to take charge. We're not cowed by our pain or anger or deep disappointment. We dance with it until we feel the pull again of being alive, returning to the supper that's still hot, to the sheer gifts of daily life, to the intense yellow of a black-eyed Susan, to the jolt of that first sip of morning coffee, to that joy of singing a really, really bad song very, very loud. We are a people of resilience, imagining new stories that make us feel whole again. Because at heart, we're all the king of the wild things. Let the rumpus begin, and let it be a dance.